Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to this morning's session. We're just going to make a slow start while we allow as many of our registered participants join us as possible. Okay, great. I can see the number has slowed a little bit, so we will make a formal start. Welcome, everybody. You are very welcome to our student panel webinar this morning, which is for Southeast Asia. My name is Hannah Griffiths. I'm one of the recruitment managers for the Oxford MBA, and within my role, I work with students who are based in Asia Pacific, helping them in terms of when they're researching an MBA and then supporting them through the application process with a view to them hopefully then joining us here at the Saïd Business School. I'm delighted to be joined this morning currently by 4 of our MBA students. We are hoping to have a 5th student join us. He's just having a little bit of technical difficulty joining the session. But we have 4 of our wonderful students who have joined us for today's session. They're going to be sharing some of their insights with you in terms of, perfect timing. We do have 5 students, which is great. So our students today are going to be sharing some of their insights with you in terms of their time in Oxford so far, the different bits and pieces that they have been getting up to while they've been on the Oxford MBA, and hopefully give you a bit of a sense of the experience that might be lying in wait for many of you. We would like the session to be as engaging and as interactive as possible. We have some preset questions that we'll go through with our panelists to start, but we very much welcome questions from all of you who are dialed in as well. Please send those through throughout the session. So whenever a question comes to you, feel free to send it through to us. We would ask that you use the Q&A function that you can see on your screen below to send through your questions. You are also welcome to use the chat if you would just like to say hello to our panel and let us know where you're joining us from in the world today. We obviously have a number of different countries represented on our panel this morning, and it would be lovely to have some insight into where you are joining us from in the world today as well. So feel free to say hi on the chat and where you're joining us from, and then do feel free to send through any questions that you have for our panelists as we're moving through the session. We'll probably try to dedicate the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar to answering as many of your questions as we possibly can. So before we make a start on the questions, I am going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves to you. So I'll come to each of you individually, and if you can just let our audience know who you are, where you are, and say, or where you're from, sorry, not where you are. They should all know where you are. And yeah, say a little bit of background about yourselves as well. That would be great. So Aisha, coming to you first, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Hi, I'm Aisha. I'm originally from Singapore. I have a background of around 8 years in marketing. I was working for the engineering company Siemens before coming to Oxford to do my MBA.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Coming to you next, Pat.
Hi, my name is Chirada Watanacharan. My nickname is Pat. I'm from Bangkok, Thailand. I did my undergrad in communication arts, started my career in advertising agency, and pivoted to work at Tencent Thailand on their music streaming application as a business developer. So I came from entertainment background.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pat. Alris, coming to you next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alris. I'm originally from Indonesia. So I was an engineer by mistake, and I'm consultant by heart. So before actually going for MBA, I was a consultant at McKinsey for 4 years. And so far, I have just enjoyed every bit of pieces of staying here in Oxford doing my MBA.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Min, coming to you next.
Hi everyone, my name is Ming. I'm from Vietnam myself, but I've been living in the UK for the last 15 years. Still very much Vietnamese there. Before coming to Oxford, I was working in finance in London, a bit of systematic hedge funds, and then fundraising for a small mid-cap company in the UK. Like Iris, loving it here in Oxford and can't complain.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And finally, coming to you, Derek.
Yeah, hi, I'm Derek from the Philippines. Prior to coming to the MBA, I worked for my family business as an operations manager. Even prior to that, my first role was as key accounts manager for a fast-moving consumer goods company. Definitely, it's my first time living abroad and even moving from the farthest parts of Southeast Asia all the way here, and it's been great.
Well, thank you guys very much. So hopefully we have some audience members who are coming from the same countries as you guys this morning as well. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you do have any specific questions for any of our panelists, do send those through via the Q&A button. So I'm going to go through some questions from our panelists first of all. So Alris, coming to you to begin with. You mentioned there that you had 4 years of experience as a consultant before joining the MBA. Can you tell our audience what your motivations were in terms of pursuing an MBA at that point in your career, and say a little bit about why Oxford felt like the right place for you to pursue your MBA?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of natural for me, right, actually, to think about the MBA, because I think coming from the Southeast Asia region, I mean, like, not to say like lots of things about the business there, but there are lots of things to learn from the more developed economies, right? And I think like that's exactly my motivation to take an MBA, is basically to open my mind and to actually learn more about stuff that are going on in the world, but not yet there in Southeast Asia. So that's basically my own motivations of like pursuing an MBA. But then, like, why Oxford specifically? I think it came back to the nature of the school itself, because I don't want to take an MBA that is just typical MBA, but it's more geared towards like how the business is evolving in the next 25 years, 50 years, and how the business should be responsible. And that's why I think like Oxford itself has a very deep emphasis on social impact, and how can we actually make the impact forces and business forces go hand in hand. And that's why I think like Oxford is the sweet spot between the business and impact. So that's why I chose Oxford at the first place.
Thank you very much. Pat, coming to you next. So you mentioned at the beginning that you are maybe from a less traditional MBA background than maybe people would anticipate, and that's something that we really value at Said. So we have a lot of diversity of thought within the cohort that you are part of. Can you say a little bit about being from that kind of maybe non-traditional MBA background? Did you have any concerns around that when you were applying for the MBA? And any advice that you would have maybe for someone dialed in who is from a similar background and who is maybe concerned about pursuing an MBA as a result?
Yeah, so before coming here, I was definitely nervous, because I think the majority of people may be coming from finance or consulting. So I was worried that I wouldn't understand what they would be talking about coming from such entertainment background. But I did a research and talked to several alumni and found that like Oxford really valued diversity of thoughts, people from different sectors or different geography. So, and I think Oxford's frame it as everyone here is not a majority, everyone is a minority. And I think that's once I came here and for the past 6 months, I think it's very true. And I think it's also the most valuable thing to be working with people from different sectors and to be learning from your friends. So for example, in my current go-to team, which is the project that I'm working on this term, I'm working with like a financial expert from South Africa, working with a telecommunications specialist from Ghana, an American world champion rower, or an engineer from India, or like a scientist who's at the forefront of HIV from India as well. And I think that's once in a lifetime experience, and to be learning from people from all walk of life. So I think, so my suggestion and advice is to embrace your difference. So I believe I bring maybe Asian background or creative industry background to the table and able to contribute that to my team. So, and also I think if you're struggling with something, for example, like if some people are struggling with accounting or finance, like feel free to reach out to your friends, because they're really open to collaborate and help. I think earlier the year we have like friends from consulting or auditing or investment banking holding like a tutoring session. So I think my advice is to embrace this journey that you are your own unique person and you bring a different experience to other people.
Thank you, and really good insight there into the other type of diversity. Well, one of the other types of diversity that you'll find at Said, which is the international diversity, which we'll touch on a little bit later as well. Derek, coming to you next. So before coming to the MBA, you had a background that was working in FMCG, and you also had some experience of working in your family business. And I know that's something you focused on a bit while you've been on the MBA, and so you're involved in the school's family business committee. Can you say a little bit about the benefit of pursuing an MBA at Oxford for anybody dialed in who is currently working for or plans to work for their family business in the future?
I think it's very enriching. The most important thing as someone involved in family business really is to learn from different perspectives. You do that by speaking to people who have different ideas and ask different questions from you. Unfortunately, family businesses, are most at risk because when they remain in terms of process implementation, it's the same for too long. And the very great thing about the MBA is that you join a cohort that helps you frame some of the toughest questions and even ask some of the tough questions that you never would have imagined asking. What are some of the factors you consider when scaling a family business? What are the success factors that made you what you are in the home country? Why do you want to scale? What are your objectives? And you also have a breadth of groups that can be associated with, that really helps with your goals. The Family Business Committee is one such group. So we hold workshops on succession planning and all these different other aspects.
Wonderful, thank you. Aisha, coming to you next. So in advance of the MBA, you had already gained some international exposure during your time at Siemens. You had a global role that was based out of Switzerland, and you're now part of an incredibly diverse cohort at Said that Pat referenced there in terms of her go-to team. What would you say is the value of the international diversity that you found at Said, and how do you feel that kind of gaining that more global perspective is of benefit to you professionally as you move forward in your career?
Yeah, I think for me personally, the diversity of our cohort is the best part of Said Business School. And coming from Singapore, as multicultural as it is still majority in Asian culture, and the way things are done in the Western culture can be pretty different. So I remember when I first moved to Switzerland, it was an adjustment in terms of our culture, the way we work. And coming here, you're just completely in awe of the diversity of the cohort, the diversity of the opinions and of everyone's experiences, which really adds to the overall experience. And I think for a lot of our classmates, it may be their first time living outside of their home countries. And this just gives us a wider perspective, so that when we re-enter the workforce after the MBA, we've now been given this chance to see things from a different lens. And I think that will allow us to also add a lot of value to the jobs that we go into.
Thank you very much. And Min, coming to you, so you mentioned at the beginning that your pre-MBA background was largely focused in finance and in London before coming to do the MBA. And I know that you are currently interning for a VC that backs founders who are addressing systemic change gaps or systemic gaps in East and West Africa. Lots of people pursuing an MBA are interested in internship opportunities that arise. So can you say a little bit about what attracted you to the internship, how you found it, secured it, and how it's contributing to your year in Oxford?
So I guess most of you guys who are here in Oxford already know about the more impact focus that the MBA here has compared to the business school. So that's one of the reasons I'm very interested in Oxford. And in terms of my career, so I was previously in small hedge funds, and then I got career finance in London, so which is what my experience is, but I wanted to shift it to more a impact focused finance. So that's one of the reasons I chose it. And also Dan Kieran, who is a career advisor, who I highly recommend it everyone to, even if you don't have an interest in impact, just talk to him, because he's such a good listener and able to map out your really be able to dive up into your personal life and to see what that you might be attracted to. Anyway, but so Dan created a project called Project Aspire, which merged students to impact focused funds and consultancy around the world. As you said, I'm working in a VC fund in East and West Africa, which is very interesting because it's definitely a place that I have not really sort of overlook before. And in terms of my work, I get to build up ESG and impact due diligence screening. So this is very, very related to what we're starting in our course as well, because I'm also done a few other things that impact finance lab as well. So to be able to put that into real life practices, yeah, it's been really amazing so far.
Wonderful, thank you. And we will let Dan Kiernan know that if he gets lots of LinkedIn connections off the back of this webinar, that you're responsible for them. But we'll let him know. Thank you. Alris, coming back to you. So one of the unique opportunities that students who join the Oxford MBA have is that they, in addition to becoming a member of the business school, they also get to become a member of an Oxford college for the year. And lots of our audience might not be familiar with what that means or what that involves. Could you say a little bit about that? So tell the audience what college you're a part of and how that college membership adds to your MBA experience.
Yeah, so I think before coming here, I think it was also like quite vague, right? I hope that this advice actually helps people who actually want to come to Oxford to get a clear picture of how the college system works. So essentially, you are studying business, but then you also have kind of like a home of you in Oxford, which this home actually comprises of students from many other disciplines or many other subjects they're studying on. So I'm part of the Oriel College, which is one of the oldest college in Oxford, and it's basically, it's one of the college that the Queen Elizabeth is kind of like the official visitor of the college. And yeah, it's a great opportunity. I've never actually eaten with Queen Elizabeth, but hopefully one day. But essentially, Oxford is a very great place of fostering multi-disciplinary expertise, so that in your college life, you can meet with people who is doing PhD in like very, I would say, different discipline that what I studied. For example, like my best friend, like one of my best friend in college is actually studying a mathematical theology. So he's doing like mathematics and how it links with theology, which is something that you would not find in the business school or like typical work settings, right? So that kind of experience you can only experience in college. Plus, obviously, there will be like lots of formal dinners, which you will not find in any other business schools, other than probably in Oxford or the other place that I can never tell. But that's it. Which is, I think it's a great experience, great multidisciplinary settings, and lots of perks also coming from the college, I'd say.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Pat, coming back to you next. One of the other opportunities that you guys have as MBA students is to get involved in a lot of different clubs, co-curriculars, competitions. So we're going to chat through some of those through the next few questions. And I know that you are the co-chair of one of the student clubs this year, which is the Media and Entertainment Club. Can you tell the audience a bit about what that involves and a little bit about what you guys have been up to this year since you've been with us in Oxford?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-chair of the M&E Club. I work alongside two other co-chairs. One is from Europe and the other one is from North America. So I'm like, my goal and role here is to try to like bridge the gap between the West and the East media and entertainment industry. So the way we found our club is, I think earlier the year, even before we came to Oxford, we have like a Telegram group of people who share the same interests. And we do some kind of like weekly calls to maybe discuss our ideas and then maybe discuss some case studies. And then once we arrive, we form this club of ours, and then we send out surveys to people in the cohort, like what they're interested in. And then we develop, kind of like design our club to have 3 pillars. So to educate, to connect, and to immerse. To educate is we held different kind of like speaker panels to bring speaker in to educate our students, also have some kind of workshops by our own students who are from entertainment industry. Like I think once we did an OnlyFans case studies of like the ethical part of it and the monetization model of it. And then the connect part is company visit, trying to connect people in the industry. And the last one is to get immersive experience. So to get out of SBS and get out of Oxford and then do other fun things like maybe film festival together or movie festivals together. So those are kind of areas where we're doing in our club. And I think, well, I'm glad you asked. Last week we held MNE full day summit on Friday, where we work with other clubs and like Aisha's club as well. And we have 4 in-person sessions with speaker, for example, from Man United, Sky, Paramount, TikTok, Twitch, Spotify. So I think the turnout was really great. Students are happy, speakers are really like willing to connect. And I think the way Oxford schedule their class allows students to kind of like have different things to do outside of class as well, including clubs. I think maybe in the future you can ask Aisha and Derek as well. Aisha is doing like sport and industry clubs, and then Derek's doing family business club. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And yeah, really testament as well to the power of the Oxford brand, I guess, in terms of being able to attract speakers from those big organizations that you mentioned as well, which is one of the big perks of being a student at Said. Thank you. Derek, coming to you next. You are involved in one of the very popular co-curricular offers at Said, which is the CDL, or Creative Destruction Lab. To any of those dialed in who haven't heard of it before, can you say a little bit about what the CDL is, because a lot of our audience won't be familiar, and say a little bit about how you've been involved with that this year?
Yeah, definitely. CDL is an entrepreneurship lab that allows you to work hand in hand with a startup with a high potential to scale. So your role essentially is more of like a venture consultant, and you're tasked to diagnose the firm and recommend ways to push the firm into eventually scaling, depending on that objective. So it's really interesting because you're there when you first step into that lab, you're there with other entrepreneurs who first have their own sets of assessments to these firms before actually culling and filtering out the ones that you'll eventually be partnered with. So in my case, I'm partnered with a healthcare startup that looks to understand some of the pain points of its customer in order to pitch the idea to VCs. It's very interesting. You learn a lot from the entrepreneurs and mentors that you are brought with. For me, as an entrepreneur, you learn things that you never would have considered, especially when scaling. The program in itself is quite challenging, but enriching, since you'd be able to learn from these experts and understand some of the thought processes of founders as well. Like, what are the things that matter to them? What are their objectives? It's not all about accumulating money, apparently. That's what I thought. But third, also, you get partnered with with people who are completely different from your background. And in my case, it's Ujang, also from Southeast Asia, but he's a non-MBA who has a passion for entrepreneurship. And together we sort of try to leverage our strengths and leverage what we know to deliver some of the results to this startup. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And good, that's a valuable lesson to have learned. It's good to hear that you've learned something so far this year as well. So positive, thank you. Aisha, coming to you next. One of the things that you are involved in is one of the school's OBNs. So I know that you were involved with the Global Business OBN this year. And again, that phrase OBN might be something that our audience haven't heard of before or aren't familiar with. So can you explain what the OBNs are and say a little bit about the Global Business OBN and the work that you guys have been doing this year?
Yeah, sure. So the OBN stand for Oxford Business Network, which are essentially student-led groups focusing on a specific industry, topic, or region. This year, I think we have around 8 OBNs. I don't remember all the names, but we have a finance OBN, consulting OBN. The India OBN was started this year as well. And specifically for the Global Business OBN, we're focused on large multinational corporations. So think of Shell, Unilever, Amazon, Siemens as well. And my role within the team as the Director of Communications is to just make sure we're connecting students to everything that's happening within the OBN, with the events that we're hosting. So myself, together with the co-chairs, we work towards connecting the members to the companies within the industry. We have had like panels of alumni from Amazon. We have a session coming up with the CEO of Siemens Mobility as well. So it's really enhance the overall experience of allowing you to hear from the industry. But I think more than that, it's the exchange that we get within the members of the industry, of the OBN. So I think nowhere else would you be able to sit down with someone from a completely different part of the world in a company that you may be interested to join in the future and understand how their organization is set up, and where you could fit in based on the roles that you're interested in.
Thank you very much. And Min, coming back to you, you mentioned earlier one of the co-curriculars that you have been involved in this year, which is the Impact Finance Lab. So there are a number of different lab co-curricular options available to students. Some of our audience may have heard of the Finance Lab, which I know is a very popular option. There's also an Impact Lab, which is very popular. You were involved in a separate lab, which is like a fusion of the two, I'm guessing. Could you tell our audience a little bit more about that, and again say about how it's added to your MBA experience so far?
So, start with the Impact Finance Lab. It's run by Anita Power, who's actually an alumni. She was here in 2012, 2013, and she's definitely one of the pioneers of Impact Finance. So we get it was run around 8 weeks at the first week of terms, and each week on a Friday, where it's reserved for mostly career stuff that we MBAs would do. So we run about 2 to 3 hours. Each day we have different topics. So we go from very, very basic finance all the way to how to measure impact, how to do the diligence of impact, which obviously is very, very helpful for what I'm doing right now on internships. But also she does provide a lot of networking content as well. So I highly recommend, even if you just already know most of what she's talking about, do very highly recommendable to actually attend the lab. This is very good network content. In terms of Finance Lab, very, very popular. Highly recommend. It's run by John Gilligan, who is a real practitioner with decades of experience in private equity evaluations. And these are real life cases with real practitioners, many of it usually running 2 halves. First half be run by usually a case study or a bit more discussion, right? And he cold, so you guys be prepared to read the case. You can't just turn up and say, "Oh, I'm not read the case," but he will call you up immediately. Which is obviously very good for participations. And even if you're not interested in finance as a financier, it's very interesting to hear from the side of the business, because if you're an entrepreneur, you ideally want to sell your business one point, and you want to understand how would the finance, all these corporate finance houses or P funds or VC funds, whatever that might be, value your business as well. So it'd be very, very interesting to hear. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have one round more of questions to put to our panelists, and then we are going to hand it over to the audience who has dialed in. So if you do have any questions for our panelists, feel free to send them through via the Q&A, and we will get to those before the end. So Alris, coming back to you, I'm sure we will have some people dialed in or listening to the webinar today who would potentially be considering coming to Oxford with their partner or maybe their family as well. And I know that you have your wife has joined you in Oxford this year, that you are on the MBA. Do you have any advice for anybody maybe who's considering coming to Oxford with a partner or with their family as well, and say a little bit about kind of how your wife has settled in and any supports that were in place for her?
Yeah, so I think in this case, I think like first of all, I think like MBA should not become a barrier of relationship. I think that's kind of like one thing to stress. And of course, like at the first time, it was like quite daunting, like what will happen actually. But then I think it's also the UK immigration system is very good at this. So like if you are applying as a student, like your partner can basically just get as a dependent of a student, right? And then there is basically it's fully supported. Like your partner can work in the UK for like a certain amount as well. It's legally allowed by the UK immigration with the dependent visa status. So that's good. Also, I think like in the MBA itself, there are like lots of support system, and also from the college. Like for example, my partner can go into the side business school and can use the library for like her reading time. Also to the college, she can actually visit the college, use the library and some facilities that can actually be used by partners. So there are lots of support system officially, both from the business school and also from the college. But unofficially, actually, there are a lot of MBA students who are coming here with the partners, and sometimes they just have like more social activities than the MBA students itself. So like going for lunch, dinners, and like like they make friends with each other, which actually is a very good and thriving community. And yeah, I think like I would say that living in Oxford for 1 year, I think it's kind of like once in a lifetime experience. And I think it's a very I mean, like we're very, very fortunate to actually choose Oxford as my place for MBA and for actually living together for a year.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we should say that it's very common in terms of the MBA cohort itself. So a large percentage of the cohort will come to Oxford with a partner, with their family, sometimes with pets. I know that we've had people come with cats, dogs. I think we've even had someone come with a horse once upon a time. So lots of lots of support available for anybody who is considering applying for an MBA, but is maybe taking into consideration their family situation as well. So that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Pat, coming back to you, one of the other ways that you have been involved in some of the co-curricular options at Said this year is through competitions that you have been participating in, and that's something that we haven't touched on quite yet. Do you want to share a little bit about the competitions that you have participated in and say a little bit about what that's involved?
So I participate in 2 competitions. The first one is the INSEAD product game, where it's held by INSEAD Business School, where you will get like a brief of a situation, and then you create a product to solve these pain points. And the second one is UCLA Media Entertainment Competition, case competition, that was held early this year, actually at LA. So some of our team members flew over there to pitch in front of the judges. So I think the first one's a product game. I think it allows you, for example, if you're not from a product management background and you're willing to learn more and work with the people who are actually in the industry, I think that's like a good learning experience. You get to work with different people that you didn't work in the core courses. And I think because the judges are from maybe Google or Meta, it's a good chance to meet the judges, could be your future employer. But the UCLA team, I think it was very interesting because during the pitch, they didn't let you tell which school you're from to remove all the bias. And I think that was like very interesting. I think 2 of the Oxford team actually got into the finalist, which is like top 6. So I think that's really impressive that like where we get to go from UK and travel to meet other school in the US. And I think the like combinations allow you to work with different people, new people, to think outside of the box and to meet future employers.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and amazing to hear that they were able to travel to the US as well. Lovely to hear that aspect of MBA life is slowly returning as well post-pandemic. So that's really great to hear. Thank you. Derek, coming back to you. So one of the things that Said is well known for is the focus that it has on entrepreneurship. And you touched a little bit on this already. I know that you had some experience as an entrepreneur before coming onto the MBA. And that's an aspect of the school that you have been quite involved in since you've started the MBA. Can you share a little bit about the school's focus on entrepreneurship and any opportunities that you've had to engage with that during your year so far?
Yeah, definitely. When I was in the Philippines, I helped start a dermatology clinic in a few malls, but I felt that my focus really was on figuring out how to start the business rather than how to sustain the business. And I think that's one of the big things that I learned here from the MBA in terms of entrepreneurship, not just with the courses really, but from the people that you interact with. And it's funny because when speaking about entrepreneurship, it seems like very obvious elements that you learn from undergrad, customer segments, business models, blah, blah, blah. But what the MBA does really well is really break down some of the most important elements of the entrepreneurship processes and have you apply them concisely to real cases and finding a way to merge different people's talents and different people's ideas into one platform. So I spoke about relationships as well, and that's very important in doing a business. But what the Oxford MBA does is really kick networking events on overdrive, and kick networking in general in overdrive. And so as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of things that you can benefit from. One, you get different ideas from entrepreneurship circles that help you bolster ideas. We have an entrepreneurship club that meets quite frequently, where it's open not just to MBAs, but even to people from the broader university. We have doctors who actually go and pitch their ideas, and where we have the time to speak to them about their ideas as well. You have strong insights that help you cover your blind spots if you yourself have an idea, and you have a diverse community who are experts in their own field that in the future you can always tap onto when you do spot an opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you. And a really good example as well of the opportunities to engage with the wider university for the year that you're in Oxford. I know that's come up and is something that we're going to touch on in a couple of minutes again. Thank you. Aisha, coming back to you, one thing that we haven't really touched on yet is the curriculum at Said, which I know that at the moment you're all very much engaged with. I know this is a really busy time of year for all of you. Can you tell our audience anything about kind of any specific components of the curriculum that you've enjoyed engaging with so far, or any kind of future elective options or aspects of the program at Said that you're really looking forward to getting involved with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really diverse set of courses that we undergo since the first semester. But one module that I've actually really enjoyed this term is called Capitalism in Debate. And it asks you the really tough questions. So for example, like, what is the role of a leader in business ethics? Or would a company really participate in ESG initiatives if it wasn't profitable for them? And I love how I go into this class thinking that I have a stand, but then I leave with all these new questions and I'm more confused than before because there's really no right or wrong answer. And I've really enjoyed that about the class. And it connects back again to the diversity of opinions in our course and how that translates into the classroom. So just before this, I was in a call with my team because we're all due to do a debate tomorrow, and we've chosen the topic of diversity quotas and how that should be implemented in organizations. So again, two sides of the argument. There's no right or wrong answer. So that's been really interesting for me. I've really enjoyed that, but it also shows how in the future as a manager, it's going to be pretty tricky navigating through these sort of topics when it comes to ethics, ESGs, and morals. And then moving into next term, we're sort of, we've given a choice of the electives that we want to choose. And I think here's where we sort of have an idea of where we're headed post MBA. And we're choosing electives that we feel would really add value to that. I'm focusing a little bit more on the strategy side of things. So I'm doing courses like business strategies and politics, leading projects, new approaches to strategy. So I'm pretty excited about those as well.
Wonderful, thank you very much, that's great. And then finally coming back to you one last time, so we've had some examples throughout the session on the ways that you guys can get involved with the wider university, can engage with that during the year that you're doing the MBA. Can you say a little bit about any ways that you have engaged with the wider university, any opportunities that you found to be involved in things outside of the business school so far?
In terms of the business school, obviously, there are many things that you can go in terms of social and sports, which how to go. I'm not good enough to be in any of the proper sport teams, so I can't say too much about that. Especially like golf, I play golf, and everyone's like playing scratch, and nowhere near that level. So, but in terms of outside business school, I'm also with the Oxford Sustainable Finance Society, where I have organized network opportunity from around the university, especially connecting with DP students who are doing very interesting research that could be of interest to the students as well, and also undergrad as well, just to get a whole holistic approach of subjects outside of business school. So in terms of a interdisciplinary approach. Also, I highly recommend. There's so many talks going on, so I can't stress it enough. Literally anything, any topic you could think of, there'll be someone talking about it with the most prominent speaker you could think of. Just good example is the one Oxford Martin School, which works like a think tank here, where they invite in certain topics. And I think theme this year is leveling up Britain, which is basically how to revitalize certain areas that is been left behind in the UK. And at the top there was CEO of HSBC, 3 Nigel Rams, and Sir John Gaines, Paul Clears, who are the most prominent economists you could think of in the UK. And
there's about 10 people turn up because there's so many things going on in Oxford right now at any given moment. So I highly recommend anything you're going to hear in Oxford, any topic you think of, there's always going to be a talk about that. So get engaged in that. Yeah, it's very interesting intellectual talks. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, is a really good example of Oxford being a unique place where you do have the opportunity to hear from speakers and meet with people potentially who you wouldn't have the possibility to do so otherwise. It hasn't sadly amounted to Alris having dinner with the Queen quite yet, but there's still some time before the year is out. So, but Oxford is a unique place from that perspective. So it's really good to have highlighted that as well. We have started to have some questions come through, which is great. Thank you to anybody who has sent one through. Do feel free to send through any questions that you have for our panelists. Before we move on, we've touched on throughout the session there on the kind of myriad of opportunities that you guys have had to get involved in different things outside of the classroom at Said. And I know something that candidates often ask me in advance of applying for the MBA is how you balance that. So how you manage the curriculum and the academic side of your year at Said, and then also all of the opportunities that you have to get involved in different things. Do any of you have any advice and guidance on that, on how you've struck a good balance between your academic life on the MBA and then the opportunities to get involved in different areas?
Yeah, you just don't sleep anymore. So I think I spoke to a lot of people before coming on the MBA, and this was like a key worry I had as well. And I remember one friend said to me, you need to list down what your top 3 priorities are. And then you need to prioritize your time based on that. So if your priorities are you want to network and look into a specific industry, then that needs to be where you spend most of your time. If your priority is to build on your academics, then that's where you spend your time. And I think that's really helped me to maneuver through the first 6 months at least.
That's really good advice. Anybody else have any thoughts on that, Pat?
Yeah, I want to add on, like, I think before coming here, some of the alumni from last year actually recommended us to list 3 things that you want to get involved in, and like, because that's could be the amount of time that you can spend on 3 things. And I think helping me make those decisions, because coming to Oxford, there's so many things like OBN, club, CDL, Oxford Seed Fund, like there's so many interesting, and for people exploring to pivot, like how do you choose? So I think my advice would be talk to the alumni in the previous year. So I reached out to the Thai alumni and I was asking him like about Oxford Seed Fund and CDL, like can you do both together? And he was not involved in the program, and he actually connects me to like last year current Oxford Seed Fund director, and I had a call with him prior coming to Oxford. And I think talking to alumni to help you make those decisions of what you actually wanted to do and learn from.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think we're very lucky at Oxford that we have an amazing alumni community who are really engaged. And definitely I would say to anybody dialed in who's kind of early stage considering an MBA, or even if you are someone who has applied and currently has an offer, speaking to alumni is a really, really helpful way to get more of a sense of what the year can involve, what's a good way to navigate the year. And they really believe in paying it forward as well. So they're usually very open to having people reach out to them on LinkedIn, connect with them, answering any questions that you guys might have, and setting up calls and things like that as well. So yeah, that's a really sensible approach if you are looking to learn more about the Oxford experience in advance of coming on the MBA. We have a really good question here from Emmanuel. Thank you for your question, Emmanuel. So they are asking, aside from all the eminence that SBS Oxford offers, what is your biggest challenge at your time studied in SBS Oxford? What can be the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome? So really good question to all of you. So anybody have a particular challenge that they've experienced so far this year, or an obstacle that you feel that you've had to overcome since your time on the MBA?
We can probably go ahead with that.
Thanks, Alris.
Yeah, so I think so as part of a very academic, a very renowned academic institution, right, in the University of Oxford. So the business schools also has a very high academic standards, right? So that's so in case, like for example, the assessment or like the assignment that you have to do, for each of the blocks or each of the terms that you need to do will need to be academically written, so that you have, so that you have to submit it in the form of an academic paper, right? And for me, right, I was not like used to actually writing an academic paper. Like you have to put like a very strong emphasis on references, referencing like peer-reviewed papers, even for something for like a business strategy that didn't typically need academic references, right? But the university and the inside business school forces you to do that, because then the result obviously will be better proven, because the journals or like the sources that you use are already peer reviewed. So there was actually a big steep learning curve for me to like gather all the data academically and then turn into an academic paper for submission, which I think enhances my ability to think more structured and in a more academically or scientifically proven way.
Really, really good example, actually, and is something that maybe people wouldn't have thought about in advance of coming on to the MBA. That's something that would be a challenge. So yeah, really good example. Thank you. Anybody else have anything in particular that they found a challenge or an obstacle that you faced and had to overcome so far in your year, apart from the inability to sleep anymore, which is a challenge obviously in and of itself?
Yeah, I think briefly, if I can touch on the program as a whole, definitely from my experience, whether it be in undergrad or learning from Southeast Asian curriculum, there's always a program that you follow. So you go to sleep, you wake up, you go to class, you study for your tests, and then you take that test. And for the MBA, it's a little different because you actually have to plot out everything. It's I would say it's structured, but it's the other bits and pieces with regards to how you work with your team, with what projects you want to involve yourself on, with what career talks you want to focus on, that makes it all the more challenging. So it's about striking that right balance and making the experience as holistic as possible, but knowing that you will lose some sleep, but also like you will enjoy the experience, definitely.
Really good advice as well. Thank you, Derek. Anybody have anything else they want to touch on there in relation to obstacles and challenges? No, all good. Okay, good. So we've touched already on college membership. Alra spoke a bit about being a member of Oriel College and how he's benefited from that. Any of you want to share an insight that might be useful to our audience in terms of how you selected your college when you did come to put an application forward? Anybody have any guidance that they could give to those dialed in on the best way to deal with that process?
I believe if you're in the admin, you are added to a Google Drive where there's a very interesting Excel type that you can choose your priorities. So, I think you got things like how many Harry Potter scenes were filmed there, how old the college was, who went there, how many of their prize. So yeah, I highly recommend to use that actually once you get the admin in. But in terms of colleges, there's quite a wide range. I mean, there's Irish College, Oriel is amazing. The MCR is absolutely class. And obviously, there's a big controversy with Cecil Road. I won't mention about that. Or Derek's college, St. Peter's, has the most amazing bar ever. I'm not even a member of that, but I do love going there. So it's really about sort of reaching out to people like ourselves and alumni to get a real feel about it, because to be frank, most of their website you can't really say much apart from knowing how many bedrooms the college has, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I can say.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice actually, and touched on something I would say, which is, in my experience, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a rarity to find somebody who becomes a member of a college who's unhappy with that college. So I think you touched there, Min, on the amazing aspect of lots of the different ones, and as an MBA student you have the opportunity to access all of the colleges across the wider university. You're not just tied to the one that you become a member of, and so even if you're a student who applies kind of later on in the process and you're assigned to college membership, you'll still have an amazing experience via your college and the opportunities that come with that. So the spreadsheet and the research is important and is it's quite a fun part of the process, but you'll end up being a member of a college, and it will definitely add to your experience for the year that you're with us in Oxford. So good to highlight that as well. We're coming to the end of the session. So before we finish up, just want to ask each of our panelists, if we do have anybody who's listening today who's considering an application to Oxford, any one piece of advice that you would give to anybody listening who is considering an application for the Oxford MBA in the future? I haven't told our panelists that I was going to ask them this, so they may need a few seconds to think about what they want to say. Derek, I'll come to you first. Any advice, apologies, any advice that you would have for anybody dialed in who's maybe thinking of applying in the future?
Got cold called, guys. Like
Somebody has to go first.
I think for me, in terms of the application, you mean like applying for school?
Any aspect at all that you think would be helpful for people?
Yeah, definitely. I think be open to new experiences. Like I had a list of 3 priorities which changed 2 or 3 times during these last 6 months. And I think you should embrace that that's normal and your opinions will be changed.
Yeah, really good advice. Thank you. Pat, any advice you would give to anybody?
It's similar to the previous advice. So I talked to a lot of different school alumni as well, and to get the vibes of the people and how they're like mentioned their school. And I feel like when I talk to Oxford alumni, they really love their experience. Like their eyes sparkles, they talk about how magical the city is, even like it's such a different experience you'll never find anywhere. So my advice applying would be also like, if you are still choosing school, and talk to the alum would help a lot to get to know like how the culture is.
Yeah, really good advice. I would echo that, because obviously a big part of the process when you're applying for MBAs is finding the school that you think will be the right fit for you as well. I think often people see the application process as the school deciding if you're the right fit, but actually that's a big part of the process, as well as you choosing which school is the right fit for you. And those conversations are really helpful in relation to that. So really good advice. Aisha, any advice you would give?
Yeah, and I think this one surprised me as well, but I would say be prepared for the journey of self-discovery that you're about to embark on. I think coming here, I thought I knew what I wanted. I knew who I was, but then you meet people with a similar drive from very different experiences and backgrounds, and it makes you sometimes, question what you thought you know. So I think I've now been taken on this journey where I've also questioned a lot of things that I thought before, and I think that's probably been one of the best parts of this journey so far.
Really good advice. Thank you. Alris, coming to you.
I think be open-minded. So first, like if you are considering to apply, just apply. I don't think that you need to think about it. I think just apply and go through the process. But like I think once you actually get in, right, just be open-minded. I think because there are like so much things that you thought you know, but you don't actually. And it's there are like 300-ish people to help you to actually think and let you know that, like lots of other things happening in the world that I think you'll be grateful of if you are being open-minded.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally, Min, coming to you, any advice for anybody who's thinking of applying?
Exactly similar to ours. I think most people and everyone is being open-minded. It's just like Derek and Asha said. Me coming in here, I have a very specific thesis of what I'm going to do, and that's already torn apart. And also just make a lot of use out of your colleague as well. Whatever you think you want to do, there's 350 people. There must be a few people who's already exactly doing that, exact same market, and have so much experience to tell you about. I mean, Iris probably a bit angry looking at me right now because he probably has too many people applying. I'm easily coming to him for preps work, but yeah, that's it for me. And also once you're here, the Oxford email address is really, really powerful. You can reach out to many people, and they will be so happy to contribute to your projects, academic project, and so on. So yeah, that's it from me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's great. And yeah, just to wrap up, to say a huge thank you to everybody who's joined us for the session today. And we hope that you found it useful, and that our panelists' insight have given you more of a sense of what you can expect during a year on the Oxford MBA. A huge thank you to our panelist of students for giving us their time. I'm sure you've gotten a sense through the session of how busy they are. And I know currently, in terms of the academic side of the programme, they are incredibly busy at the moment, and all very much looking forward to their Easter break. My colleague Megan has just popped our email address into the chat, so for anybody dialed in who has any questions after today's session, or wants any information about how to apply for the Oxford MBA, or to have their profile reviewed with a view to potentially applying in the future, do please reach out to our team, and we'll be really, really happy to hear from you. Wishing you all a lovely end to your Wednesday, and thank you once again for your time. Thank you, everyone.